guys, let's talk about the part that everybody hates and nobody looks forward to, evictions. All right. So, as I stated previously, the rent is due on the 1st. You have a grace period until the 5th. On the 6th, it's now considered late. If I don't hear from you from the 5th to the 12th, I file eviction papers. I'm not doing it to be a bully. I'm putting my foot down. If I don't hear from you, you're not going to hear from me. You're not going to hear from me until the sheriff shows up at your door and you call me asking me why the sheriff was at your door. Well, you know why. I know why. Because you didn't pay rent. Well, why do you have to be like that? Well, all you had to do was make a phone call. Better yet, text me. Easy. Texting has made life so much easier. You know, you don't have to worry about talking to somebody on the phone. Text me and say, hey, today's the 5th. I don't get paid till the 8th. Can I pay you on the 8th? Hey, sure, tenant. This is your first time in 6 months. If you pay me on the 8th, I'm going to waive the late fees for this month. Oh, the tenant loves you. Okay. Well, the tenant hasn't paid you. You file eviction papers. It's called a dispossessory affidavit. You can do it online in Georgia. Georgia's very pro landlord tenant, and it makes it easier. And I'm sure it makes it easier for them, not having everybody show up or get a bunch of mail in their P.O. box filing for a dispossessory affidavit. All right, so you file it. They get served. You're not going to court. The reason why I do it on the 12th is because, and I've done this before many times in Georgia, if they're late for February and I haven't heard from them, I've had tenants out the same exact month by doing my due diligence and not procrastinating and getting the process started. Because if they don't have the money, I want them out. Like I said before, you have to have that certain mentality. And I'm not proud to say it, but I've had to put out a mother and kids, and I felt bad about it. But you're taking food out of my wife, and my kids' mouth. Okay, so if they're not paying you rent, you are actually paying them to live there. All right, they are living free. So if they're not paying you, you're paying for them to live there. You have to remember that. Like I said, I've had a mother and children put out, and it wasn't the first month. I gave her time, but when she lied to me and I caught her on a lie more than one time and she made false promises, that's it. Got to get them out. You're going to find that happy medium, but you cannot let your tenants push you around. All right, so 1st, 5th, 12th, eviction papers. She was served. I'll say she just for the sake of saying she. She was served. We go to court. You can hire somebody, you can go yourself. It's not that bad. This is where I go back to saying keep a paper trail. All right? Do not let your tenants bully you and say, well, you didn't fix this, you didn't fix this, you didn't fix this. All right, so your paper trail says, okay, I'm going to get taken care of. All right, if you haven't taken care of it, in Georgia, you walk into court as a tenant and say that, well, my landlord didn't fix this. The judge will say, and I've heard it before, well, that does not give you a right to not pay rent. What you do, tenant, is you pay rent and then take it up with the landlord later on. So don't let the tenants bully you and push you around and say, well, I'm not paying because you're not fixing this. It will not hold up. In Georgia, I know for a fact, will not hold up in court. Keep a paper trail. If they say their toilet's running or something like that, you have a text saying, hey, my guy's going to come take care of it. All right? When the guy shows up, say, hey, my guy said he was there today. How did it go? When the tenant answers you, that's your paper trail. You need to keep all this stuff for court, okay? And if it gets to that point, all right. So now you get into court. The judge is going to ask you, and I'm giving you guys this information from a Georgia standpoint. All right. So the judge is going to say, hey, landlord, tenant, you guys go outside in the hallway and see if you can come to an agreement. All right. Talk to your tenant. If you guys have just a bad relationship, all right, well, okay. Well, we couldn't come to agreement. Now you're going to have a hearing. If you guys come to an agreement and you guys discuss the payment plan and get you back on track, if they want to stay in the property, you get what's called a consent judgment. All right. So the consent judgment, for example, says tenant X will pay $200 next week. If the tenant doesn't pay, don't mess around. Go file for a default judgment. Get a default judgment. All right. The tenant And I may be forgetting a couple of pieces, but um, if they don't want to stay in the property, let me go back to that real quick. The judge will give them, and last time I was there, the judge gave them 10 days to get out of the property. All right? They have 10 days to get out. If they don't get out in that 10 days, you can't just go throw them out. All right? So what you have to do is file what they call a writ of possession. Writ of possession means the cops are going to come over and force that tenant out. All right? With the tenants here, or the law enforcement here that's going to show up, you make an appointment to get a writ of possession. All right? They're backed up. They're probably a month out. So you're not going to sit there for another month and wait for your tenant to get out. There's some professional tenants out there that know how to get past the system. So all you have to do is call the, I think it's the sheriff or the marshal's office, and find out when the writ of possession is set up. All right, so now they're relaxed because they know you've called, you got the writ of possession set up, and they say you're a month out. Okay, so today is January 1st, February 2nd is when you're up for your writ of possession. The law enforcement officer will also tell you, bring 4 of your friends, because if I show up at the time that we schedule and you don't have 4 of your friends, I'm leaving, because the sheriff has to stay there the whole time. All right, so make sure you have some buddies to get there, and they give you. And this, like I said, this is all Georgia. They give you about an hour to get all of the tenant stuff out, right? All right, so January 1st, the tenant calls and says, oh man, I'm not getting evicted until February 2nd. The thing to do, call the sheriff or the marshal every day after 3 o'clock and see if there are any cancellations, all right? So on January 5th, you call and say, hey, you guys have any cancellations for tomorrow? No, we don't. January 6th, you call and say, hey, do you have a cancellation for tomorrow? Yes. We have an opening for 3:30. Okay? 3:30. You can be nice and call your tenant and tell them, or you can just show up. This tenant that I had really irritated me. They were very nasty to me. They were rude to my workers. I didn't tell them about it. When we got there, they still had hot tea steaming in the kitchen, and they had gone somewhere. Candles still lit. When we got the stuff out, I texted the tenant and say, hey, you better get over here because your stuff is on the street. You know, you can change the locks at that time. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Changing locks, things like that. Get over here, because in Georgia, you put everything on the curb. The landlord is responsible for getting everything on the curb. Once that law enforcement officer leaves, you will see people come out of the woodwork like roaches in the dark. And you have some night vision goggles, so they can't see you, but you can see them. They will come and take all of the tenant stuff. So it'd be nice of you if you decent terms, or if you want to be a good person, tell that tenant, hey, your stuff is on the street. You better come get it quickly, because it's free game. They're not. It's stealing, but there's no law enforcement there. They just left. These people will come out from all parts of life and come steal this tenant stuff, and you don't want that to happen. You don't want them to lose everything, but you got to get them out. And like I said, you have to have a mentality to do that. I've been cursed at to my face, yelled all kinds of names. I kept my composure. I had everything recorded. So you got to get the tenants out. So that's the process. You get a default judgment. Then once you get a default judgment, the tenant's out. Everything's for the most part free and clear. You got your property back. You're not worried about them destroying it. Get a default judgment. You can file what they call a FIFA, FIFA. It's like Fieri Fascist or something. I can't remember what it's called. But in Georgia, it's like $6. You file that with, I believe it's a superior court. It puts it on their credit report. So if they ever go to apply for something, or somebody pulls their credit report, another landlord, they're going to see it. And now you can start the process of, you can get a... I'm drawing a blank, but you can garnish the wages. There's a regular garnishment and continuing, I believe, garnishment. Regular garnishment, you go after assets. Okay, continuing garnishment, you got a bunch of paperwork to fill out and some money to spend to get their wages garnished. I've done both of them. I've garnished, get a garnishment on a car or garnish their wages. It's a pain, and 99% of the time, you're not going to get your money. Because if they didn't have money to pay rent and they're decent people, they're not going to have money to get. They're not going to have some kind of job or anything. But what I do now, just pay an attorney. They get 33%. I let them deal with it. If I don't get paid for 2 years, it's like Christmas because I forgot all about the garnishment. You get a check in the mail, say, hey, this is from your tenant from 2 years ago. It's like Christmas early. It's great, but I don't waste my time really trying to go after people. I put on the credit report, so now if they apply for a mortgage, it's going to be on there. And a lot of times they'll file for a Chapter 7, and I'll get a notice in the mail from saying that there's a meeting of creditors for them to get a bankruptcy. And I never expected to get the money anyway. So it is what it is. All right.